My father was in the army, and he, so obviously they were in married quarters, so we would have been living over there. I suppose my memories of Spike would have been the freedom that we had there. My father, he was a quartermaster sergeant in the army, so he would have been in charge of the stores and the rations and things like that as well. So of going up to the fort and going to see him in his office, and he'd give us prunes, you know, he'd have boxes of prunes and he'd hand them out to us, and that was a big thrill. Or a penny to go spend in the canteen next door or whatever, 2 doors up. We'd have, he was very friendly with one of the captains in the army as well, and who had a boat, and they'd go out fishing an awful lot as well. And when they go scout fishing, then they'd come back in the evening time, and they'd have, everybody would go down, the families would go down, because they'd have a load of fish and they'd be giving it out to all the families and everything. So it was a very community-based island, you know. There was about, I suppose, when we were there, I suppose there could have been about 30 families there, so maybe 200 or 300 people living there. Large families of, with, let's say, 9 in ours, 12 and some of them 14, that sort of way. So, as I say, a very community-based, you know, island. And that the house we lived in had in the back garden, they were supposed to be haunted. It had a big tree, and it was supposed to be, a monk was supposed to have hung himself there back in God knows when. So that was kind of a, you know, all these stories kind of around the place of the island because of its history and that, you know. So, and we used to have chickens as well. My father was a fantastic gardener. The house itself had flower gardens. We all had our own little flower bed that we used to maintain ourselves. He had vegetables, he had every type of fruit, and then he had a field then further down that he'd do potatoes and things like that. And then he had we had chickens and hens and things, you know, and that was part of our jobs, to go down and feed them. And when we had to move out, my father retired from the army at 60, which you had to do, and then we had to kind of move out of married quarters then. So I was heartbroken when we were moving out, because to me that was all I knew. And even though I used to go to school in Cobh, I didn't have many friends there, so it was kind of a big new world going there, and I was quite upset at the time. We kept going back to the island though for a good while afterwards. My father then became manager of the quarantine station over there, which was to do with the foot and mouth disease, and then the cattle coming into Ireland had to be quarantined. So, you know, we still had that link to the island for a long time afterwards, I suppose. And we go back in there at Christmas time. When I think of it, we get a boat over on Christmas night, the family, you know, just to kind of go over, and we go up to the officers' mess, and just, as I say, just be part of it, because, you know, as I say, we love the island and that. We're a unique breed, I think, Spike Islanders, and we all know each other, and, you know, every time when we meet, especially, we had a huge gathering there about in the year of the gathering that I was part of, and we had 700 people over there. It was fantastic. It was just, people came from England, Northern Ireland, everywhere around the country that had once lived there, and it was just brilliant to meet up with people. And we'd talk about our house that probably 6 other families had lived in before us, and 3 other families after us, and we were all fighting to get photographs in front of our house, and we were saying, no, that's my house, and they said, no, that was my house. So it's, you know, as I say, you'd have that link, even if it was people that you didn't really know. The link was there all the time, you know, with everything. So.